Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you, if you don't already know, and virtually everyone does, a woman who is more daring and more alive than anyone that I've ever met, Deanna Arnold.
I know Steve said all the thank yous this evening, and I just want to say thank you all again for coming out tonight. Each and every one of you here tonight means something special to me on a personal level. Some people I've just met for the first time this evening who I've already bonded with, and I just can't thank you enough. I have a story that could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I know that you all want the 50-50 raffle that's coming up. What do we have to, like $200 or something?
Oh, I better get it.
And
want to see how that played out.
And there's door prizes and some other things going on. So I promise to keep my 10-page story to a minimum this evening. 18 years ago, I was stricken with a very rare liver disease that attacks 1 in 5 million people. There's no rhyme or reason to why things happen in life. They just happen. All the information that was given to me is secondhand. I don't remember anything that happened to me leading up to my getting my transplant. They say when something very traumatic happens to you, that you block it out. But this is...
Speak louder, Diana.
I can't. I have walking pneumonia and a sinus infection and a sore throat.
Thank you.
I can't talk any louder than I can talk. It was cold and flu season, and actually it was this time 18 years ago that I started having these exact same symptoms. I was run down, I thought I had the flu, I had the cold, I wasn't feeling well. I called a friend of mine and I'm like, Dawn, I don't feel good, come and stay with me for a couple days, like a big baby, like I can't take care of myself. She came, she stayed with me for 2 days. On the second day that she stayed with me, I couldn't hold down water. And she said, no, this is not the flu, this is something more serious. I was living in Connecticut at the time, so she drove me to Manchester Hospital, which is about the size of Cape Cod Hospital. The minute we got in the emergency room door, the second we got in, I slipped into a coma. My body shut down, that was it. They did blood work, x-rays, tests, CAT scans, whatever you name it, they did it. And they determined that I was in serious condition. And they flew me from Manchester Hospital to Hartford Hospital. More tests, more x-rays, the whole gamut. And they determined that my liver had failed and it had shut down and was functioning at 6%. There are pumps for your heart, there's pumps for your lungs, pumps for your kidneys, there's nothing for your liver. So when your liver shuts down, that's it. I had 48 hours to live. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They put me on the national list. Not local, not regional, national. The first liver that came up that was available was mine. I was the most critical person in the United States at that time. They called my family, who lives in upstate New York, and asked them to come and say their goodbyes because they didn't think that they would get a liver in time for me to live. My mom passed away when I was 10 years old, and my dad has been my father, my mother, my entire life, and I just, for selfish reasons, I'm glad I was in a coma because I don't think I could have dealt with my dad, who had just buried his wife 10 years earlier, saying goodbye to his only daughter. My aunts, my uncles, my friends all came out and said their goodbyes. By the grace of God, there was a 16-year-old girl in Hartford Hospital who had been in a car accident. And she was my type, the perfect match. And she had talked to her parents about being an organ donor about a week ago, just a week before her accident. She saved 7 lives that day. including mine. She donated her heart, her lungs, her kidneys, her liver. So I got the liver transplant, and that went pretty well. I'm still not really remembering the timeline here. This is all secondhand information. After I woke up after receiving my transplant, after all the anesthesia wore off and the pain medication, they had explained to me that I'd had an emergency liver transplant. And I'm like, oh, all right, can I go home now? Thinking it's like having your kidneys out. And they're like, no, we don't think so. They did some testing, and what had happened was when my liver shut down and my body shut down, I suffered from anoxia, which is you get no oxygen to the brain. It's like when you drown. And I suffered brain damage. I was 23 years old at the time, living a normal life. I was an auditor for a storage company, traveling all over Connecticut, southern Massachusetts, going to night school, working on my accounting degree. I had a 4.0 average, just living life like a normal 23-year-old person lives a life. I had to, at the age of 23, learn how to read, write, walk, tie my shoes, do everything that we take for granted every day. I had to relearn all of that. I spent 3 months in the hospital, not so much because of the transplant. The transplant itself went fine. There was a few ups and downs, but I suffered brain damage, and I'm actually labeled TBI, traumatic brain injury. But a label is a label. We're all wearing labels this evening. It doesn't really mean anything. Since my label, I've run 5 marathons. I can't count how many half marathons. I've started a nonprofit. I've done everything. A label is a label. It did not stop me from achieving my goals. So to kind of speed things up, because this is where I could go on and on and on and on and on. So speed it up, 6 months. I was visiting my donor sister in Hartford Hospital. She received the heart from the same girl. We call each other donor sisters. And I went to visit her, and she had to go down for a CAT scan or an x-ray or something of that nature. So I had to step out of her room for a couple minutes. And stepped out of her room, came back. I was out of her room for 7 minutes. Somebody stole my purse. At that time, I'd only been out of the hospital 7 months, maybe 8 months. I was living off of welfare. I was living off of HUD. I was living off of whatever state aid I could get. My disability had not kicked in yet, so I was living off of whatever I could live off of. I had just picked up my food stamps, my rent check. I just renewed my driver's license, and somebody stole my purse. And I'm like, from a hospital room. I'm like, how disgusting is that? I had no keys, no money, no nothing. I couldn't get home. I didn't know what to do. So the nurses, because I had made friends with them the time that I had spent in the hospital, were kind enough to raise enough money to have a locksmith come over that evening to change the locks on my apartment so I could go home. And then they raised enough money to get a cab for me to go home that night, and so I could get to my car the next day. So I went down the next day to welfare, and I explained to them, I said, I just picked up my checks yesterday, and somebody stole my purse, and now I don't have any food stamps, I can't pay my rent, what do I do? And pardon my language, oh, there's a child in the room. They said, too bad. That's not what they said, but there's a child in the room. And they said, we can't help you. I said, you can't help me. I said, how am I going to eat? How am I going to pay my rent? I need gas for my car to get to my doctor's appointments. What am I going to do? And they're like, too bad. We can't help you. They're like, no, it's a scam. Everyone says they lost or had something stolen. So I went home, cried a little bit, said, all right, what am I going to do now? I went back to the hospital, and the nurses told me about a local church that donates food. I I've been through a lot of shitty things in my life. Between my mom passed away when I was little. I love my dad, he's my best friend now, but I was raised by an alcoholic father. I've had some really crappy things happen to me in my life. And here I am. I had a liver transplant. I have brain damage. I have no money. I have nothing. It was the lowest day of my entire life because I didn't know how I was going to eat. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent or put gas money in my car, and nobody would help me. Nobody would help me. So I went to the church, and you call ahead and you tell them your situation, and if you have any dietary needs, they let you know and ask you what kind of car you drive. And they put a bag together for you, and you drive up, and they just come out and they give you your food, and they say God bless you, and that's it, and they don't make you feel any less of a person. And I made a vow that day that I would do what I could do, if there was anything that I could do to help other transplant recipients so that they didn't have to go through what I had to go through. Because I couldn't pay my rent that month, and I was evicted, and I had no money, and I had no food. And I made a promise to myself and a promise to God that I would do what I could do. So 6 years ago, I started Dare to Be Alive, Dare to Be Alive, as a way to give back to the organ donor community. And in the 6 years that we have been incorporated, we have helped 45 individuals with their financial needs. We have given out over $25,000 in grants. We sent an 8-year-old boy to summer camp for his first time. He had a kidney transplant, and I got a letter from him, and I asked him. I said, you know, did you have a good time? And he said, yeah, it was better than when I went to Disney World last year.
Wow.
And I said, well, what was the best part of camp? And he said, the love that I received, because it was a special camp for kids with organ transplants. We flew a 1-year-old boy from Booster to Ohio who needed a heart-lung transplant, and he couldn't get in on the Angel flight in time, and the parents didn't have the money for the airfare, so we flew him out to get his transplant. We sent the kid to camp. There's so many stories that I could tell, that so many people, 45 people that we've helped out. The next phase of Dare to Be Alive, and I'm telling you, I could go on and on. I'm skipping ahead a lot here. There's a lot more, but I know we all want that $200 sitting in that bucket over there. In the next 2 years, Dare to Be Alive, we want to raise $100,000, and we're going to do it.